Welcome to the shop. I'm Jared and this is the Questionable Garage. And this right here is a lot of rust. It is our 1970 Plymouth Duster that I was given from my friend Taylor Hull, initially for the Southern Classic, and now I'm doing something absolutely absurd with it. I am taking it to be the first person to ever compete at all three Holley events in the Grand Champion entry, which is road racing, autocrossing, drag racing, car show. We're gonna do really well there. Countryside drive. There's a lot that it's gonna have to do, and it has to have 3 engines in it in the period of 3 weeks. So in that first episode, we went ahead and pulled out the engine that was just randomly sitting in there. We got the old K-member out of the front end, and we built up that really awesome QA1 front end for it. But we weren't able to put it in because some of the small rust issues I knew that we would have turned out to be a little bit more significant. So today, we're going to go ahead and get all of the front end pulled off of it, the outside sheet metal, so we can get the frame patched up. And I'm really hoping I get a package in that is absolutely absurd, and it keeps going along with the whole idea of putting in way too good of parts in a really bad car to make it the best possible car. So, there's not a whole lot to it other than we got a lot of sheet metal to pull off. We're gonna go through and learn how to kind of cut and build sufficient patch panels to get welded into a car like this and kind of rebuild that unibody structure. And hopefully by the end of the episode, have a really, really nice reinforced unibody and hopefully a K-member in it too. So we can put the wheels on it with the hubs we don't have yet. I've got a lot of parts to order. But let's get to work. Short intro, guys. We're getting to this. All right. Forgive the wind noise, but it's hot. We're gonna, I've done so many of these dusters. I'm gonna actually bag stuff. Some of you have asked a good trick of how to keep track of things. Ziploc bags and a Sharpie. Another good option sometimes, cardboard if you're gonna put something together pretty quick. You can take cardboard and kind of make the shape of what you're unbolting, like a valve cover or cylinder head, and poke the bolts in. That's a pretty good method. I've used that some. Let's see how far we can go before lunch gets here. Now, one thing I'm going to be really careful is like protecting the broken stuff. As weird as it sounds, I want to keep this look as much just like it is where possible. Although I might need some headlight buckets, I think. Those aren't doing too well. Yeah, most of that's rotted away. I mean, who would have expected that? Jeez. That's gonna be fun. Come on. Who would have thought I'd be drilling bolts out? Come on. Ow. All right, grill off. Definitely get a tetanus shot before working on something like this. Grill, bumper, we'll do full front valance in one bag. Ugh. I should get more electric ratchets and power tools. I don't know why. I've just always been a mostly weird person that likes hand tools the whole time. I don't know. Also means I can't blame a tool if a bolt breaks. It's just my fault. I have no clue how big or how much of this is fender. Actually looks like part of the fender scoots in like the whole way. That's different. Or you know what? Maybe it's not different. I've just never seen it. You know, having that one fan on me helps a lot. Hopefully it's not killing audio too badly. Doing my best. All right, let's do left fender, right fender. Ow. That was not necessary, car. Ow. I don't see those coming out. All right, how can a car from 1970 have bolts come out easier than a 2000 something? Everyone wants to make fun of people saying they don't build them like they used to, but sheesh, they kind of don't. Okay, gotta be careful. I feel like there's more bolts somewhere. Oh, it's because there are a few more. Okay. Doors off is the right move. Just gonna make everything easy. Good thing is I'm sure this door is really light. No. There we go. Ugh. Actually not as heavy as I thought they might be. Oh. That's just one hernia out of two. Hot, 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 hot. Oh, Mr. Cool. You got my email. Let's do something. Now, normally there's a couple more bolts down below, but our buddy Rusty took care of all of that for us. Is there another one? No, ow. Huh, okay. So, there's a few more bolts in there. Oh, there it is. Right, wait, where is it? Ow. See, when you don't know where it is, just force it gently. You'll eventually find it. There we go. All right, now we can remove the rest of this. I'll do that and then I'll bring you in and we can see the problem a little bit better now. Well, okay, we have got the right side taken apart too, and now that it's opened up, I can show you what the real big problem is with the, with the frame rail. It's not an important part, it's only the unibody frame rail, right? So if we come in here with this side taken apart, you can see that section is a solid chunk of metal, as it is, in here, down there. That is what one of these A-body Mopar unibody frame rails should look like. If we come over here, you notice there's a little chunk of metal that's been welded in to kind of help brace a few things, because if we come through here, it's holy. It's been going to church pretty religiously. The whole top side of it, the whole length, even down there, is gone. It has rotted away. So our plan is to clean it all out. We're going to treat it in that section, and we're going to build caps to replace the rotten metal the whole length down. One problem is, though, part of the frame rail we need to work on is under the floor. But one small problem that, solves itself, that's a trunk lid, and that's just some random metal. So this floor needs to get replaced anyway. So we're going to be cutting that whole floor section out to have full access to our unibody frame rails, to recap the frame rails, repair them, put the floors in the car, and then hopefully I'll also have in my hand by then a whole lot more of really nice fancy metal chassis reinforcements that we're putting on this car. There's also local to me a near mint perfect shell for $2,000 that is just ready to build. I should probably just go get that thing, but my friend Taylor gave me this car, and I'm kind of saving it. The whole destiny of this car was for it to get crashed in a YouTube video. Instead, we are building it into something awesome in a YouTube video. Still got to come up with a name for it. It's a duster. Everyone's called them rusters and dusties and things like that. We're doing a triple crown, the grand champion. Maybe something long, I don't know. It's really hot, so I'm gonna finish cleaning up, make some phone calls to find out where some of my parts are, and we'll pick up tomorrow where we're gonna be pulling all of this floor pan out, the entirety of it, and start cutting and scuffing the frame rail. The frame rail right there. So before I could even look at installing the new floor, we had to get the old floor removed, which is a little bit trickier than normal because there's already been a couple patch panels done. On the passenger side, we've talked about it, Taylor used a former trunk lid to turn into a floor, and it worked good enough for a car that you were going to jump and crash and throw away, but we want to build the ultimate race car. Now, because this is a restoration, not a restoration, I'm ripping most everything out, doing the quick removal with an air hammer with a cutting bit. Now, if you're trying to preserve and you've got really good metal underneath, take the time, grind out your spot welds or drill out your spot welds, or if you're going to replace all the structure underneath, you can use this method as well. But there's really nothing that beats a quick air hammer with cutting bit for getting this metal cut out quickly. Once I get the main panels and patches cut out, I need to start finding where the spot welds are on the transmission and torsion bar cross brace, as well as getting the spot welds and the metal cut away from the rocker sills. This is just a process of going real slow, going as flush to the metal as possible so you don't cut into the metal underneath that you need to protect and preserve. But when you're doing a method like this, you may run into ripping it a little bit. Again, in a restoration, it's a big problem. In something like this, we're able to quickly weld and patch that up, or if it's a small hole, it's something we don't have to directly worry about and we'll treat with rust preventative. Now, given that this was a manual transmission car, it does have that extra sheet metal that is for the shifter assembly.
The transmission I'm using most likely won't need it, but this is a part that isn't reproduced and people do need, so I took care to cut it out in a way that this could be carefully removed from the floor pan. Now, something to stress, before you just start cutting up all the metal, you need to know what's underneath it. This small section near where the rear seat goes is actually a double layer, and if you just cut right through it, you would end up ruining the rear structure of the car. So it's cutting very carefully in the middle. There's this little bit of airspace that's made in between the floor pan front structure and the rear structure. So again, take your time, do some research before you just start cutting things out. Make sure you cut it out in a usable way. Another part I got from Auto Metal Direct was a replacement trunk rail. This car had a completely rotten one, and it would let water leak in if I'd ever, put weather strip on this. Another reason for me really wanting to replace it is it does help tie in some of the quarter panel structure to the rear structure, giving a good, strong box situation, and with as much rot and rust was in there, it just wouldn't work. So you start by going ahead and cutting out all of your old metal. Again, if this was a restoration process, getting all new sheet metal, it would be a lot easier. Instead, because I'm trying to preserve as much of that outside appearance as possible, I have to very slowly grind and cut and sand everything away, and then weld it in a stitch pattern instead of a traditional spot weld, just trying to keep it looking crappy. Because I want to keep all of that old appearance, the stitch weld is the only way I can do it, but again, I can't necessarily cut all the old rusty metal away and get a nice perfect welding surface. So it is very tricky to manage the heat and not completely blow through all of this old rusty metal and kind of keep that cool look while giving some strength back in it.
All right, let's show you everything we've been working on. Now, we've been talking about it during the time-lapse and action footage. You really couldn't hear much of the work because air hammers and saws are incredibly loud. But let's go inside where, a floor would be. There isn't one. Here, let me step in, take a seat on the Viper chair here. I'm tripping. Bump that a little bit. There we go. We have got all of the original floor removed. This is the factory seam. We've got most of the flange on it, which is really good. I did cut it a little bit right there. We'll make do. And if you notice, we've got this gray epoxy on it. What I went ahead and did, it takes a little over 24 hours for this stuff to cure. This is like a farming implement for tractors, rust encapsulator, enamel primer. I find it works really well on projects like this where you're trying to preserve what exists. You're not necessarily doing a perfect showroom restoration. You're wanting to make your project something you can drive and enjoy. So when you're doing, that level of work, there's nothing wrong with going all of the extra miles to do a perfect restoration. But what you're going to have happen to you really quickly when you chase all of this little stuff and you decide to build a replacement panel for that, and a replacement panel for that, and a replacement panel for that, and an extra little replacement panel for that. Still got to do our frame patches here. Your project just creeps, the scope of it gets way out of hand, and you run the risk of losing interest and never finishing it. So decide and tell yourself, what is the point of the work you're doing? What is your ultimate goal with the car? This is meant to be a fun, rough around the edges driver. So little things like extra pinholes and stuff, as long as I stop the rust, it's not a problem for me.
if you want to, especially with a Duster, if you want to see like a nice, perfect restoration process, a channel I really enjoyed watching and actually kind of reviewed the videos a couple times to get ready for this is Hoosier's Garage. I had to think for a second. I grew up in Illinois. I should know Hoosier. Hoosier's Garage. He's really witty, reminds me a little bit of the Bad Obsession guys. And he goes through a restoration level replacement where you're taking and building little tiny patch panels. And again, if we were doing a restoration, we would build a patch panel there. Honestly, we might even just get a whole new rocker assembly. We would be doing frame rails. But for the goal and whole point of this car, this is perfect. This is going to do everything we absolutely need and do it well. We're going to be able to get a good solid weld and reinforce this entire unibody and have it be strong. Like our main bones, it's just we have weird rot. The floor's rotted, a couple things rotted in some odd places. So for our purpose, we don't have to go to that crazy level. Build it for what you're doing. Just work with what you got, with what you're trying to do, and within your skill set. At the end of the day, you'll learn a little bit more. So we have got all of this curing. It takes 24 hours, but I do want to show you something we were able to pick up today that's going to help this a little bit better. Now, if you're not familiar, AMD Auto Metal Direct is like the Mopar metal restoration providers. They have a ton of officially licensed Mopar restoration metal, and I pass them twice a day coming here to my shop. So this morning I stopped by, visited them and Jason. We have got a new trunk rail, which we will be able to replace that with. So we're going to have something, you know, the trunk can relatively seal well to. I'm going to build a little bit of a patch here, but we're going to have to be really careful because I want to keep this rough look. So it's going to be a little bit of a patch. We'll be able to close and seal our trunk. But the big thing we picked up, the most important thing, I've got a whole new floor pan. We have got ourselves a brand new stamped steel. I believe this is 20 gauge steel from AMD for the Duster. They've got it for just about everything. What I really like is it includes all the little brackets and stuff. If we were putting rear seats back in, we would need to install those. Some of the earlier floor pans, you would have to salvage it from that mess. We have, I believe these are the seatbelt. Yeah, those are the seatbelt mounts that go on the inside there. We've got reinforcements if we go to bucket seats, which we're going to. And then this will sit, and then you drill your hole. I believe the buckets go here, and if you have a bench seat, you end up drilling a hole here. I'm not a Mopar guy. I'm becoming one, though. Between Roadblock and the Satellite and the Duster, they're kind of fun. But the problem I realize I'm running into, if we look at this thing, you know, it's at least 4 hands wide, right? And, you know, we've got that same, you know, 2 or 3 hands that way. If we look at the side of this car here, it doesn't go in. I'm going to have to pull the quarter window, which I don't know how to do, but we'll figure it out. We got to wait for some paint to dry, which is really exciting. And then we're going to cut up, build a frame, and get a floor pan in this thing. 5 weeks. This thing is going to be winning hearts at LS Fest.
Beer in the fridge. Why don't I call friends? Because they have jobs too and can't just drop everything. There's moments and projects where I just stop and go, Jared, how many times did your parents drop you on your head? The answer is honestly, they really probably didn't drop me much. It's more I did a lot of stupid stuff and fell on my head a lot. Well, that was kind of impressive. once I got it in the hole, it just literally fell right where it needed to be. So one thing we'll need to consider is some of our like frame rail stuff is non-traditional, which may cause some minor interference issues as we try to lay everything out. So now it's just a matter of just slowly kind of positioning, seeing what works, where it's fitting. And then what we'll need to do is mark from the bottom where our cross members are, mainly like our torsion bar here, that cross member and trans cross member, because we're gonna need to drill through the top a bunch of spots to do plug welds, along with the entire perimeter of the floor pan where it meets the top of the trunk, the floor pan where it meets the bottom of the trunk here. Normally you would then also plug weld to your firewall, but my plan is to actually stitch weld it, which rather than having the holes and drilling through, we're gonna stitch both surfaces to it. It's a little bit stronger, a little bit easier, and it's gonna work better for us since, again, our metal's not absolutely perfect. We're working on, restoration. We're gonna do our best with the metal that we've got when we're installing the new stuff on top of it. So I've said it a lot of times this episode, you need to decide the type of build you want and what you're going for. What are your goals? And that's gonna dictate things. It's easy to say should be absolutely perfect all the time, no matter what, but you don't always need perfect. You need good enough to drive, and you need to be safe. So that's where I'm coming in and telling you, us going through the way we're gonna do it is perfectly safe. I have no issues flying, around road courses, doing a North Georgia mountain run in this car. But if I went to a concourse restoration grade car show, I would lose a whole lot of points, but I'm okay with that because that's not the car I want. I want a driver. So decide what you're building, what you need, what you want, and make sure you meet the goals of that. So I'm just gonna go ahead and stop the cameras because there is going to be just a lot of little fiddly where I'm gonna kind of move, figure out what's interfering where, get this laying flat. I'll then make my marks once I pull the floor pan back out. I'll pick you up there, and then I will show you the whole lot of fun process of, drilling 1,000 holes, probably. At least 1,000 holes.
And with the panel test fitted, I scribed underneath with a Sharpie everywhere a brace or other panel overlapped with our new panel. So once it was removed, I could do preemptive drilling for spot welds. There were a lot of holes to drill. Many holes. Turns out there is a tool for every problem. So I went out and bought this tool. It made it a lot easier.
Well, it's the next day, and I wanted to go ahead and show you all of the drilling and marking we did on this floor pan while it was in the car. Well, we did the marking in the car. We did all the drilling outside of the car. And there are a lot of holes to drill, and I was kind of getting tired of drilling holes, and then I remembered a really cool tool exists, so I went and picked one up. This is a flanger hole puncher, and it gives us these really nice punched holes, and also with that side, you're able to flange, so if you're having to build some sheet metal that'll sit on top of each other, you can actually flange down a section so you get a nice smooth joint. It's a really cool tool I'm glad that I have, but it still wouldn't quite cover, there's no way for it to go through here, unfortunately. So that was a matter of just lots and lots of drilling. Now, if you are, again, doing a restoration, try to match the factory drill patterns. We are trying to get a solid floor pan in a very rusty car. So I am adding extras and doing what I think is going to give me a good, strong structure, because that's what we're chasing. We're going to put this car through a whole lot of paces. We need this to be as rigid as possible. Now, you notice I did not do any flanges on the butt where it's going to meet the firewall. And again, it's hard to get a good clean access to do the spot welds on all of that, but we're going to stitch weld it both from the top side and the bottom side instead of spot welds, which should give that a little bit more strength as well. We're going to turn some fans on because it's still warm and start getting this thing shoved into the car and welded up. I'm kind of excited to have a solid floor duster over there.
Now it's time to start welding in the floor. I started with the firewall seam because, again, some of the patches and frame rails underneath make for an interesting fit, so I wanted to go with something I knew I needed to be nice and solid. I'm going with a stitch weld here. The factory would have been a spot weld, but given the type of repair I'm going for and the extra strength and stitch welding I want to do, I'm going with stitch welding from the inside. And as I'm slowly working it in and welding it down, I like to go center out when I am doing something like this. I did that with the pinch weld and with all of my frame reinforcements, gently hammering and massaging the floor down as it needs to be as I go. Another option would be to go ahead and fully set everything in. You can use Clecos, temporary rivets, or just some self-tapping screws to hold it down the entire way. But again, knowing that my base is a little crooked, I'm going center out, massaging it as I go rather than pinching the entire floor down all at once. When welding, make sure you know what you're welding to. You need to be very careful whenever you're welding galvanized metal. You don't want to breathe those fumes. So my tactic is I have fans blowing and moving, and anytime I'm actively welding, I actually hold my breath. Having a powered and filtered respirator would be the absolute best, but always make sure you know what you're welding so you don't put yourself in the hospital.
That's a lot of welding. If I'm perfectly honest, you would think a bunch of spot welds and some stitch welds would not be that much work. But you're also on your knees, folded over, getting burnt, cutting yourself, you know. But this I don't want to say junky duster, but this duster here, we now have a fixed frame rail. We now have a trunk rail installed. I still need to build a little couple patch panels. We haven't really talked about it, so let's walk over and show you. I'm calling this a restoration, not a restoration. We're trying to keep as much of the bad as absolutely possible, but make it structurally sound. And our old rain gutter, there was no structure there. So normally you have your spot welds coming through, but we had to be careful with that. So there's stitch welding. We've got incredibly rusted metal. I still need to build in a little patch panel here. And that is where working on things in the modern era is going to come to our favor. We still have to build a patch panel here for the rear valance as well. So, you know, water doesn't just immediately run in. But this is where we don't necessarily have to weld all of that. We're going to be able to utilize some of those really nice modern panel bonding adhesives in some of these places. So it's a mixture of using new modern technology, our old welding, everything to get this thing put back together. But the floor. Oh man, it is a lot of work to put in a floor, but it is so rewarding. I'm gonna say this. We talked about it during the actual time lapse, how we stitch weld there and how we had to use the air hammer to pinch it down in places. That is not the AMD floor's fault. This thing, even how bent and just, you know, rough's the nice way of saying it, our chassis is, it dropped in incredibly well. I've, again, watching the videos of Hoosier Garage, some of the other channels that have installed these things on good cars, they drop right in incredibly well and, you know, fit. But when we have almost a 1/8 of an inch height increase on that frame rail because of patches to it, you know, the seat brace was knocked off and I kind of just measured it rather than waiting till the floor's in. It dropped in incredibly well, and we have a very solid duster. Now, if you're going to say, Jared, why is it not welded right there? Any of you who have ever been working in your garage, welding on a project, knows exactly why it's not welded in the back there. Right in the comments, why do you think we don't have that back bit welded just yet? Yep, ran out of gas. And it's Saturday afternoon. Nobody near me is open to exchange canisters. So I'm just taking this as the universe's way of saying, Jared, you've got pretty much everything done. You got a lot of welding to do in the next episode. You should probably stop and go see your family, which I agree with, universe. And I think you guys will understand me wanting to go home and spend time with the wife and the two Great Pyrenees. They deserve some attention too. So we've made a huge amount of progress. We've got a frame fixed, we've got the drip rail fixed, and we have a floor. And I'm floored with all of the progress we're making really quick on this Duster. Still don't have a name that stands out. I will say this, I was talking with my friend Scott, and we're thinking about some kind of triple crown thing and the horses, and, you know, Secretariat's probably the only one most people would know, maybe American Pharaoh. But just none of those really stuck out as a good name. So he mentioned maybe a mint julep, because that's what you drink at the Kentucky Derby. And I said we should, you know, maybe call it funny hat, because that's what everyone wears at the Kentucky Derby. And apparently those funny hats are called fascinators. Maybe the Triple Crown Duster gets the name the Fascinator, because whoever is dumb enough to want to do it is a fascinating person. I don't know. Anyway, I appreciate you guys, as always, hanging out with us here in the shop while we do very questionable things like rebuild broken Porsches and put way too much money into a very broken Duster, but it's going to be fun, and it's going to be saved from the salvage yard. It's warm. But I'm Jared, reminding you guys to always make questionable choices. And just because you can, you probably should. We'll see ya.